All right, here comes Tiny Penny, discussing his character 100 Necro in hardcore. Even though it's the wrong way. Bam, 100, baby. All right, so what I did in hardcore to make this build work, there's a lot of softcore builds out there, and I wasn't always a fan of trying to use softcore builds, so I've played nothing but hardcore since beating the campaign before season started. So what I'm gonna show you is the current build I use to get to 100. I'll also showcase a Lilith fight where I did die, but that's because I didn't know any of the mechanics of Lilith. It was my first time getting a character to 100. I will show that at the end of this clip, but I wanted to discuss what exactly I all had, and I will link this build in the description below. I did get this 100 during my charity stream back on August 11th, so I know it's been a while since I posted a video, but let's get into this. So, for the helmet, I had blood mist triggers an explosion on surrounding corpses. When blood mist detonates the corpse, its cooldown is reduced by 0.25 to 0.5. I had the 0.5 on there. Then we come down to our chest armor, increase the amount of skeletal mages, increased by 2. The bone prison spawns a pool of blight that deals 75 to 125%. I only had 100% bonus damage over the 6 seconds, but I did have that on my gloves. Pants, obviously the aspect of disobedience, I had a 0.5. So you had your 50% increased armor. And then because you have your blood mist, while unstoppable, you increase your movement speed. And as you see, all these gear traits I actually went out and got on my gear, whether I rolled it onto it or did get it down on there. And at the bottom of the description, I did fill in everything that you're looking for to make this, because you really want a lot of cooldown for this. So on top of that, we come down to our weapon, and we increased our Shadow Blight. We did have 120% increased for 6 seconds thrown on the Shadow Blight. We went with a two-hander. We were playing around with one and two-handed. You can have the option, if you wanted to do increased cooldown, run a one and two-hander. That is perfectly fine as well. But big one you want is on your amulet, getting your tentacles to do the critical strike chance. You want your aspect of grasping veins, and then the big one that I used was the one unique, the Ring of the Mindolin, for your lucky hit chance, minion attack speed, maximum minion life, all of that. And then the minions do work with the barber. And then your second ring was your Shadow Blight damage. Key passive deals 25 to 45%, stacking up to 5 times. I did have the 45%. When I did roll it on a different ring, I had a 37%. So as long as you don't have the bare minimum of 25%, but if you can get it there, these rings seem to drop pretty regularly. This aspect, I should say, the aspect of decay. But on top of that, you want to run Emerald Crit. I was running Maximum Life. I did have a helmet that did have some loss of control if I happen to get stuck, some damage reduction, but for most of the time you could just throw in health. Big key to this build is having a vicious heart, so every time you go near a corpse, you activate a corpse skill, dealing 30 to 20% reduced damage. And make sure you're reading this correctly, because I made the mistake, and I had a 36% reduced damage, and I went with the bigger number. I didn't even, for some reason, I overlooked it, and it wasn't until I was level 98 that I happened to be doing something that I realized, oh, this is saying that my skill does reduce damage. I'm an idiot. And so the only next one I had was like a 20, 22 or 28%. So I did throw that in. I didn't actively go hunting for more of these hearts like I should have to get a 20%, but that's what you want, is 20% reduced damage. So keep that in mind, that it deals reduced damage each time they go off. So the less, but what's nice is your tentacles are always pulling, your corpses are always going off and releasing blight. On top of that, obviously you want the barber, and it's your preference if you want a 2 second, 3 second, 4 second. I had a 3.1 for the longest time, and then I had a 2.0. When I did the Lilith fight, I put in a 4.0. And then the big one, you want Decrepifying Aura for your last one. And if you can, go ahead and put your barber in your amulet once you get a good amulet. But I did cooldown reduction, Macabre skills, which did your Bone Prison and your Mist. It increased all of that. I had 4 points into that. And then the Decrepify, you basically want to play off your Brutal and your Vicious gem, or your Malignant Heart, to make sure you have the correct Malignant Heart for what you need. So just play around with these three. They don't have to go. I literally put them where I could place them, which really did hurt me in the beginning, because I kept getting really good Brutal amulets, and I needed to get a Vicious Heart in there, and everything I had was blue. So just work with that as you're leveling. But obviously I took Bone Storm, Blood Mist, Corpse Tentacle. You have your Raised Skeleton. I literally, because there's no reason for me to ever need it, I just changed this to a keybind of 5, so I wouldn't be clicking it while trying to click around on the map. And then you had Corpse Explosion and your Bone Prison. When you're running in a group, half the time you were nerfing yourself a little bit because you weren't throwing Bone Prison in with a group, because most of the time you end up trapping your friends with you. But on the skeletal side, we're going with the Reapers. Have a chance to carve flesh, so they're constantly making you more corpses. The second upgrade for your skeletal mages is that they fire an additional shadow bolt, and the golem you just sacrifice for more critical strike damage. So when we come into our skill tree, the first thing, really, it doesn't matter what you want for your first actual path of leveling. You just want something to get you along the way. I did Decompose as I was leveling, because basically you're trying to get down to all your extra levels. And if you're leveling along the way and you haven't unlocked all your Paragon points and all your extra skill points, take something that's going to be useful for you and then change it along the way, because what you do need is just putting your points in here, but you are going to come and get your lucky hit, and this is the chance for your damage to create a corpse. I threw 3 points into that. Then you come into your Blood Mist, put 1 point into each, all the way to Blood Mist leaves a corpse every second, because once again, your your passive, your blood mist is going to cause corpse explosions to go off. It's going to be generating blight. Your vicious malignant gem is going to be constantly causing corpse explosions or corpse tentacles. So you want that over the fortify. And then with the macabre skills, if you actually go into your settings and you typed in the macabre, it would show that your bone prison, your blood mist, there are 3 macabre skills, but these are the 2 that you want. And it threw an extra additional 4 points into there, so I ended up getting +5 here, and then I think I actually had some bone trap on there. I had +9 or +8 on my bone trap. Maybe even one time I had 13. But continuing on, we want corpse explosion, your bigger radius, and then your corpse explosion, instead of it exploding, leaves shadow damage, damage over time, and that's why on your gear you have a lot of damage over time, shadow damage, and that's why I'm going to have this link in the description so you can physically actually go and look through this build and see what you want. Also, consuming a corpse generates essence. This one, you're only using that point to get to here because you literally don't care. You're not using any more essence. Once you get to this build, all your skills don't consume essence anymore. So you deal 6% increased damage after 6 seconds after consuming a corpse. So we threw 2 points into that. Then we came and took 3 points into damage to close enemies. Then we did, you deal increased damage to cursed enemies. And because you're not going to be running Decrepify, but you're using that auto passive from the Brutal Gem, you want to tier into Decrepify. This helps with your cooldowns, adding the buffs and the nerfs to your mobs. So you curse the area, they're slowed, you throw 1 point into that. Lucky hit, you have a chance to stun your enemies for 2 seconds. And lucky hit, Decrepify has a 15% chance to reduce your active cooldowns by 1 second. You want 1 point into all of these, clearly. And with your Brutal Gem, finding, doesn't matter how long the second duration is, the best Brutal that you can find is the one where it says you only need 1 enemy near you to trigger your Decrepify, and then you'll just always have it up. So it doesn't matter if it lasts 5 seconds, 8 seconds, 11 seconds. As long as you have 1 enemy to activate it, you're good to go. Skeletal Mages increase their damage and life of your Skeletal Mages by 60%. Then we come down here, and you go into your Corpse Tentacles, because you want these to be active. 1 point into each. We come down, they're slowed after they're pulled, and then it makes them vulnerable. Vulnerable is the big one. Same with your Bone Prison over here. 1 point into each. Enemies inside Bone Prison are vulnerable. If an enemy is trapped, you gain more essence. You don't really care, but early on, if you're still using essence, that's really good because you can trap a bunch of enemies, generate yourself some essence, and then you're going to come down here. When a corpse is formed by your skills or your minions, you have Fortify for 6% of your base life, so this is where you're getting some of your Fortify off of. You could get more if you did your mist, but the whole point is this is a mist-based cooldown with shadow damage over time. So, damaging an enemy with darkness skills increases your movement speed by 15% for 3 seconds. 3 points there. 3 points into when you damage an enemy with darkness skills. They take 6% increased shadow damage from you and your minions for 2 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. And then darkness skills, we have 3 points into terror. So you do bonus damage for enemies slowed, stunned, immobilized. These bonuses apply shadow damage dealt by your minions. Vulnerable, Decrepify has a chance for stunning. You can even throw into your build if there's so many more enemies next to you, you can stun them. It's a seasonal aspect. You can throw that on your gear if you want. all of that applies to make you do more damage. Then, of course, you want to take Bone Storm and just put a point into each of those. And then you'll come over here for Inspiring Leader. After you've been healthy for at least 4 seconds, you and your minions gain 12% attack speed. Your minions cannot lose more than 30% of their maximum health from a single damage instance, which is really good because basically your minions never die. And if they do happen to die, which I've had them die when I was fighting a butcher 20 levels over me, we did leave that butcher. We scrolled out because we could not effectively kill him fast enough when we nerfed ourselves in shadow damage and melee damage. Close range was on that on that glyph that we ran. Once we saw that and we'd only got him down a quarter health, we're like, man, this isn't even worth it. Let's just leave, and we restarted the nightmare. Then obviously, instead of you using ossified or any of that, you come down and do your Shadow Blight. So shadow damage affected skills, Shadow Blight minions now deal Shadow Blight every time your minions do damage. They're affected by Shadow Blight, they do additional 22% damage. So if you look back at here, so the big thing, the big change that I did add to this build is, which you don't see on here right now, is I don't have the big thing that I changed to this build, and I'm sorry for that, but there is a we have a Bone Storm. So let's see here. Blood Mist, Echo, Lance, Trilling. So one thing you can add right here. So Bone Storm and Blood Wave are also darkness skills that gain additional effects. Enemies damaged by Blood Storm take shadow damage over time. Blood Wave desecrates the ground. It travels, dealing shadow damage over time. So what I did not realize that I in fact threw onto here was we have the shadow damage over time. We have the pool of blood, the blight, but this build, we did in fact change to a main hand and an offhand. And you're not going to want a shield, you're going to want cooldown. And on that cooldown for your offhand, which I did have the offhand here, cooldown reduction, crit hit chance, lucky hit, minion life. If you can get minion life on it, it's good, but you can also get shadow damage over time or even some movement speed. You want that in your offhand, and you do want changing your Blood Mist and your Bone Storm into shadow damage. So you do want that skill on there. So disregard running the two-hand because 50 to 120% still good. This is with a two-hander, so technically it's maxed out at 60%. Make sure you have both of those, main and offhand. Stay away from shields. Shields only have thorn damage on them. Next, we'll go into our Paragon tree, which our Paragon tree, our starter board, we did have Amplify, and we just went through your standard pathing through there. And like I said, I will have this description down below, so you can just go ahead and look over this. Then you want Control. We came all the way over and got the, when at least 2 corpses nearby, you gain damage reduction because you're generating corpses, your mist is generating corpses, you're always surrounded by corpses, you're just making yourself a little more tankier. And we ended up splitting and going 2 ways. So the first way you can go, because you've already gotten to your legendary, come over and go this way and come get exploit into your bone graft. And as all you're doing is picking up some of your extra damage. You're basically just wanting to get the extra node for vulnerability. That's all we're doing with this one. We're not doing too much extra. I originally had bone skill in here just because of you're doing your bone storm, but I also did bone spear until level 80, and then I decided to switch my entire build, and I ended up trying to find a way to be more tankier with your only invulnerability being mist. So constantly getting your mist back and your bone storm back, it was really nice. So we come up to our third Paragon board, and we're going to do Scourge, which you and your minions deal 10% increased damage to enemies affected by shadow damage over time effects. And then we come, just grab some of the damage to elites, shadow damage over time, damage to elites, then we go straight back into our next board. Our next board, we come get our Essence Glyph, and just in case you didn't see, that was Scourge. Get our Essence Glyph, and I did get all of these to 21. But at a minimum, you want to get them to 15 so you get the max radius, because a few of them you will have to throw Dex into just to get enough points to activate it. And then once you get it to level 15, you can take that point out of Dex. But I did come over here. Consuming 5 corpses grants increased damage for 6 seconds. Really nice grab. And then critical strike, damage to injured enemies. And we come up into our 6th and final board and got Dead Razor. Whenever your minions deal damage to an enemy, they take 1% increased damage from you and your minions up to 12% for 10 seconds. You basically just come in here, and this only works if you have level 100. Coming and get the last few points into activating this glyph, and then the last 2 you have over here is some minion damage, and you can try and grab more minion damage if you want there, or just throw it in a random point elsewhere. But that is the build in a nutshell. I will leave this in the comment below. And now we're going to continue, and you're going to see my Lilith fight. I did die. This was just a clip of my Lilith fight. I was proud of myself, and then I should have just scrolled out, but I was not aware of the out of bounds area that instantly kills you. So I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you in the next video. All right, thanks. Bye, guys. Oh! We got her to half health and lost her 100. I win! I win!